Welcome to the Meta Woman podcast. We address the issues, opportunities, and challenges facing women in the development of the metaverse, the biggest revolution since the internet itself. Every week, we bring you conversations with top female talent and business executives operating in the gaming and crypto industries. Here's your host, Lindsay the Boss Poss. The Meta Woman podcast starts now.
Hello, and welcome to the Meta Woman podcast, part of the Holodeck Media Podcast Network. I'm your host, Lindsay the Boss Poss. From struggle to success, we're covering it all. To our returning listeners, thank you so much for supporting the show, for leaving the 5-star ratings and reviews, telling your friends, for doing all of that. And for our new listeners, welcome. I hope you enjoy. Joining me this week is Gina Lee, Chief Marketing Officer at Gen.G. For those of you who are not familiar with Genji, they're an esports organization that connects the US and Asia. Genji operates in China, South Korea, and the US, and their team profile includes 7 global championships and teams in Overwatch League, League of Legends, World Championship, a men's Valorant team, and an all-women's Valorant team, an NBA 2K League team in Shanghai, among others. As you can tell, they have a lot going on, so much so that it was even hard for me to get through. It's also worth noting that Genji puts a lot of effort into inclusivity efforts, not only by supporting things like an all-women's Valorant team, but having initiatives like #TeamBumble, the leading team platform for the empowerment of women in gaming, and the Gen.G Foundation, a 10-year, $1 million commitment to collegiate scholarships targeted at women, people of color, and low-income college students. So, a lot to cover, but Gina, welcome to the show. To start, I would love for you to give the audience a bit about yourself and your background, given that we've kind of walked through a little bit of Gen.G.
Yeah, sure. Hello. Thank you for having me, Lindsay. It's nice to, I'm so sorry that I've delayed this recording over and over, but it's been so crazy because, lots of things happening for us. As you mentioned, we are a global esports organization. So, we have different leagues and teams running all the time. And, it's just been busy, busy, busy. But so my background, I actually have I did not come from a gaming background. I've been with Gen.G for about 3 years, and it's been a really, a whirlwind experience, a lot of learnings. But my original background is I came from the fast fashion space. So I worked at my last job right before I came over to Gen.G I was the head of global brand marketing at Forever 21. Seemingly very different, but actually a lot of things are pretty similar. Obviously at Forever 21 or at any fashion company or product company, your main purpose is to sell the product, right? So you're creating marketing campaigns around product and, clothing, shoes, makeup, whatever it may be, right? And working in global brand marketing, there were a lot of different channels in which we, communicated the brand out to the consumer. There's obviously, Instagram, huge for fashion, Twitter, YouTube, a lot of creator work. And then in there was also a lot of brand partnerships. I worked on a lot of collaborations between Forever 21 and other brands, working on limited apparel capsules and, seeing those apparel capsules come through all the way to fruition with gifting creators, doing experiential events, things like that. So it seems really different, but in actuality, there are a lot of things that overlap and are kind of similar, right? Like gaming as an audience, you have to understand or, seek to speak to the larger audience. And how are you going to reach that audience? There's the segment of the audience that's super into the competitive space and wants to follow the esports teams and how they do within each game and league, and then you have like the more casual gamer audience who follow an organization or a creator because of the things that they do within that space. And then how do we as an organization help to empower the fan base to be able to interact and engage with not just our brand, but with our sponsorship brand? So, maybe different platforms. I wasn't as familiar with the Twitch space. I've learned a lot since. And, Twitter wasn't a huge priority for fashion. So, it's always very image and Instagram driven. So, different kinds of media, but, at the end of the day, it's really about reaching an audience and the platform that they feel the most comfortable in and understand the brand through those lens. So, yeah.
Gotcha. What made you want to transition from fashion to gaming? Um, I mean, it could just be that you just really liked Gen.G and it was a good opportunity, but was there any reason you either wanted to get out of fashion or into gaming, or was this just kind of a right place, right time type opportunity?
Um, So my whole life I wanted to work in fashion. That was like when I graduated from school, college, high school, all that. I was like, my career is going to be in fashion in any which way possible. And I worked in a variety of jobs within the fashion space. I eventually made my way into the social media and marketing part of it, but I did do a lot of work in in-store displays. I did buying, I did apparel design, I worked on a small line for a little bit as well. So when I was approached with this opportunity, I had already a very long career within the fashion space, doing a lot of different aspects of it. So, and I guess you could say right place at the right time, but I think there were also things that were really interesting about it. It was a very emerging space at the time. Obviously gamers and people who are like very big fans of gaming were already like very, much a part of the communities. But somebody like me that was coming in kind of as an outsider, it was very eye opening to see that there was such a large community of people, you know, very engaged, a huge community that was almost hidden. I mean, not hidden, but like to the general, um, you know, in school you were never like, oh, I want to grow up, I want to be a gamer. You know what I mean? So it didn't seem like a career path that was readily available. So I was very intrigued by that. You know,
Gotcha. I think maybe
yeah.
now, hopefully, things have changed with the rise of Twitch, but certainly when I was growing up, yeah, people did not grow up wanting to be professional gamers. Um, Given your passion for fashion and your background in it, how do you see the overlap in fashion and gaming? Seen a lot with Fortnite and Roblox, for example, or Nike. I think they've been kind of big on making metaverse experiences and plays, but how do you see the overlap between fashion and gaming and creating those experiences for customers?
I think there are a lot of ways to look at fashion and gaming overlap. Um, I feel like we're still in this like discovery phase too of what that looks like. There on one hand, there at like a base level, there's creators, there's people who have a lot of audience share, and there's, the ability to gift them and gift their followers to really see what the product is like. Um, when you get to be a little bit more, into the metaverse area, I think different brands are looking at it in different ways. And I think the brands and partners who are looking at it as transactional in a transactional lens, for me, I think that that's not quite the way to approach it. Um, I guess like the example I would give to a brand is, why is the Times Square billboard some of the most coveted ad space? When I was at Forever 21, we had a big digital billboard attached to the store, and it was like the number one thing that artists and models wanted to be on. It was like the thing that meant the most to them when we would work on a lot of these campaigns. And it's kind of the same thing where it's like you don't have somebody look at that billboard and go immediately, oh, I'm going to buy this item right now. You know, it kind of has to be a longer term play. It's about being relatable and being there in spaces that people are looking, consuming, and watching, and caring about. And so I think that's really the future of the metaverse. I'm sure that, or these like branded activations. It's more about the experience, I think. I don't know if that really answered your question. Sorry, forgive
That makes sense. I
me.
mean, I get what you're saying. You can't just necessarily have an empty marketing campaign and expect to sell everything. There has to be like a consideration for how the consumers are actually interacting in that experience.
Yeah. And I think also consistency, right? Like there's a huge play right now for people to be first to metaverse. Brands want to be first to metaverse, but like, what is metaverse? It means different things to different brands. And then also, what are you doing in that metaverse that provides value to the consumer? And that, I don't know, people care more about what they get now. Like the consumer led activations are land better, right? So I think, yeah.
Huh. Is that a trend that you've noticed recently, or is that, I'm trying to figure out the exact question I'm asking, but you jumped from fast fashion to gaming. And fast fashion presumably has a really different kind of marketing strategy, technique that they use to go after customers, things like that. And in that jump, is that when you kind of notice the success of consumer-led activations, or do you think that this is more of a global shift that's happening in all industries, or what has changed in the past 5 years? Or maybe it hasn't. Maybe consumer-led activations have always been more successful, but it's certainly that to me is not something I've heard before. So can you just elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's probably a global shift that happened because of social media and access that people have to content and ads, and what is viewed as an ad. When I was first working in like the social media space, it was when Instagram was barely getting to have fashion Instagrammers who were being paid
Right.
by brands to push their product. Like, it wasn't regulated. There was no like, you didn't have to do the hashtag ad, all those rules. Like it wasn't there yet. It was really very discovery oriented, and it was very it felt like there were no boundaries almost. That's actually how I made my shift from making clothes to like marketing clothes, was because I kind of had like a quarter life thing, and I was like, I'm going to be a social media person. And I started doing like photography stuff and styling stuff on Instagram. And that like snowballed into a whole new reinvented career based off of that. And so I think that's, people are so much more used to consumer led content now. And obviously, there's still an element where a brand wants to seem really cool, or like, what I'm looking for the right word on the tip of my tongue. Um, like a brand that people look up to, right? Or like think is cool, right? But at the
Right.
same time, you also have to be relatable. And so I think that's where, there's like the two different kinds, where you build the brand and have like really, really cool, high end looking campaigns. But on the other side of it, you also have to balance that with things that are more relatable.
Yeah, and speaking of those influencer type relationships, or I mean, influencers, creators, artists, all different categories I really recognize, but you manage a lot of collaborations between brands and those types of folks who might come from the external world who do the consumer led media as their main form of content. How do you navigate those relationships to make sure that both sides are getting something valuable from that collaboration?
I think that in order for both sides to have something super valuable, I think people have to be really clear about um, two things. The first is their core brand message. What are they trying to do with this campaign? And is it a shared value system with the creator? And then the second thing um, is allowing the creators to have some freedom within their medium, because they're experts within their mediums and their audience. They know their audience the best. So I think with having, making sure that expectations are clearly outlined and the success, like what defines success to the brand and what defines success to the creators, like those have to kind of align in order for both sides to get something positive from it.
Gotcha. So specific measures of success kind of help you determine how two sides work together.
Yes. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And also along that same vein, I think that one of the most important things in these collaborations is that elusive authenticity word that it comes up a lot in gaming. And gamers, I think, are especially notorious for calling out when brands or collaborations or agencies or whomever, when there's maybe I don't know, a less savory play, I guess I'll call it. So what I mean is gamers are quick to point out if a streamer maybe partners with a brand that is not well liked in the gaming community. That's I think that they're known as being a very fickle and somewhat harsh audience. They often adjudicate things themselves in Reddit and Discord communities. But when you're coming up with those measures for success and when you're pairing together the content creator or the influencer with the initiative that you're trying to market, how are you thinking about making sure that those pieces match so that you can kind of maintain that, again, elusive authenticity piece in the gaming community?
Um, so I think understanding what the brand is trying to do and then understanding the type of audience that the creator this is, I feel like I'm just saying what I already said. Sorry. But we exist because, or when we are working with between brands and creators, I don't want to say we're like an agency because we're not. We're an organization, and the creators are a part of our organization, and they want to work with us. We want to work with them because we share certain brand values, or we like their content, or there's a lot of reasons why we would choose to work with a certain creator. And so when we're trying to match up the two sides, we have to really get that what the brand is trying to do is the same as what this particular streamer can do. Like you said, the audience is really vocal. If you try to force something to a particular creator's audience, like they're the first to be like, this is so fake, or, and I don't think that you can really force that. I, I think you've mentioned, people have done collabs because I'm sure there are high paychecks or whatever, but at the end of the day, it can get very rejected by the gaming communities. And I think that's really interesting. It's almost like empowering, like we can dictate the tone. The audience has a lot of power in this situation.
What are some of your favorite activations? What are some of the things you've actually worked on at Gen.G that just really excite you?
So we spent a lot of time, in the last 3 years. When I first started, like people knew us as a Korea first organization. Like we had the Seoul Dynasty, which is the Overwatch team. Never mind that the audience is mostly North America, or like there's a huge North American fan base for that team. But it's a Seoul team, Seoul Korea team. We also had a League of Legends and a PUBG team out of Korea. And when I joined, I was really I was part of the wave of the first setting up the North American headquarters in Los Angeles. And so I think a lot of things have happened along the way that at the time were like just a pipe dream, right? Like I would have never thought that we would work with a global sports brand like Puma and that they would, support us worldwide, not just for our Korean teams, but for our initiatives in North America. I think that's one of the partnerships that I love the most, because I think like in the beginning, I was like, talking with our now CEO, who was a chief operating officer at the time, Arnold, and we had like what would be our goal, and it was like to get a major sports sponsor for us, not just in Korea but globally, and it happened. So it's really cool. Um, so as kind of a continuation of that, you know, next week we're going to be unveiling that we are launching a partnership with a game developer. A game, sorry.
No, that was an excited ooh.
Oh, okay. I was like, did I interrupt her? A game developer that is huge in Korea, and the game that we are working on marketing with them globally is called Eternal Return, and it's a battlefield style game where the characters are they're very cute. Like a lot of cosplayers would actually like them. So it's similar to League of Legends, where you're there's like a map, but it's a battlegrounds game where it's not like 5v5 like League of Legends. It's kind of like PUBG or Fortnite, where you can like go into the map and play amongst other people. And then the other additive layer is that the characters are like really cute in like a Genshin type of way. Um, so we're working with them to promote their game worldwide. And so I think like I would have never even thought of that as an option, right? 3 years ago when we were working on this, like to draw on our roots in Korea and like to show how we expanded and adapted per region, and each region has their own marketing initiatives, but we are also a global brand. And then working with a publisher to push their game, and I mean that's kind of crazy. Like
That is
I'm
so cool. That's much different. I mean, I'm not extremely familiar with how all different organizations kind of operate in the team space. So I don't want to say something and then have it be wrong, but I'm not super aware of any other partnerships with developers quite like this that center around a game launch. Um, and where you're really pushing forward a game. Like that's the kind of a new way of doing things, I think. I could be wrong. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
I mean, I want to say it's revolutionary and nobody does it, right? But yeah, I mean, I think that it doesn't, there isn't an example of it, but also I could be wrong, you know.
Yeah, I can't. At least none are coming to top of mind. So that's quite fun and very very interesting. Um, so shifting gears a bit, and actually this is kind of related to the discussion we're having, but you were recently promoted to VP of Brand Activation and to from VP of Brand Activation and Apparel to Chief Marketing Officer. And then we talked about this brand new activation and all of the different work that you're doing. Can you talk a little bit about how you're able to elevate your career? Would love to hear kind of from two different angles. One being what you did for yourself, education or experience wise, and the second being, the type of environment that you are in at Gen.G, where there is such a heavy focus on promoting DEI principles, and you guys seem to really work hard bringing that into the organization. Um, so yeah, if you could just tell me about that.
Sure. Um, so my educational background is I studied art. Actually, my major in college was studio art, and American Studies, which is like a weird major where you do like English and history and sociology all combined. So it's completely unrelated to where I am in career right now. Um, but I think like at Gen.G, the environment here is very um, ideas focused, right? So I don't think that because a lot of us had previous lives as, you know, with careers in other industries, I think maybe we don't come to the table with this is how gaming should be, right? Because we're all still learning and we all understand that we're like students in the space as well. So I think there is an environment where, I mean, maybe I could be wrong. This is how I feel, where we're rewarded for being um, inventive, I guess. And like, I know my strengths as an employee. I know my background. I know that, I've done solid work within the branding space, and I have like a weird, cross section of background where I can like work on design things, but also have done stuff in social media campaigns and influencer management and experiential events. So when I came here, I fully expected that I was going to be drawing on a lot of those different pots, and I think you kind of have to just like go with it, right? I mean, I would. That's the cool thing about feeling like you're in a startup space. You don't really have to feel like, oh, I can't do this because I'm not supposed to do it. And I think that, obviously as the organization is growing and has grown over the last 3 years, like, it's more structured than it was when I first started. But I think we're still led by this idea that, um, you know, you can be creative, and there are different ways that that creativity is expressed. But I think intellectual creativity is probably the way that I would say that we like what we value. Um, And then I think a lot of the DE and I stuff, like that stuff is meaningful to me personally, right? I've worked in like really large organizations that, and I won't like say where or what, but at a certain point you think like fashion, you think it's like all women, but at a certain point it's not, right? You get to a certain level and you're the only woman in the room. And so I think a lot of those experiences are, probably echoed within gaming. And so it's really important for us, and we actually truly believe it, to build a inclusive staff, right? A staff and an inclusive community. Like that's something that is important to us. So um, it's been it's been great to see it play out because like the leadership here is very open, to new ideas. And I would say like my advice for people who are trying to level up their careers is to definitely not like undersell yourself, but also don't oversell yourself. You know, The- I think like if I came into the gaming space and I was like, I know everything, it would be like a really different outcome than me being like, okay, I know what I know, and I know what I need to learn, right? And I think that kind of that way of thinking is applicable in a lot of situations. You know.
How much of the kind of, creativity and innovation and the push for having an environment that's very aware of DEI principles do you think comes from Gen.G being a company that operates in multiple countries, multiple different, language barriers and different cultures? How much of that do you think can kind of be attributed to how the organization is run across different countries?
I mean, I think maybe like half, right? Because our like
I love that you
50%,
gave
I
an exact number. I was thinking like,
guess.
oh,
No, we really love percentages here, so and to track success. So
that's so funny.
I had to give you a metric. Um, I would say like 50%. I think like our leadership is really um like a lot of our leadership is something American, so like Asian American, like, you know what I mean? So
Mhm.
like I think like, and I do think like when you enter into our company, it's like we definitely have like all hands meetings that are weekly or biweekly now. They're global. Like you have like the China office on there, you have the Korea office on there. We have like full staff of translators. Like it's a whole thing to like even get through like updates because in the different regions, it's like, yes, of course, like most people outside of the US learn English, and yes, they like have language skills that I would only dream of having. But at the same time, you still like having business English is different than having conversational English. And so we have like translators. You have to like kind of, I think there is a big factor in that, and business culture is different by region as well. So for me, that was a big learning, like on how to communicate to staff in Korea in a way that is helpful. I think Americans can tend to communicate in a way that is overly direct sometimes and doesn't always match the culture of, and that neither way is wrong or right. It's just the way that, the culture is. I've definitely had to learn a lot about that during my time here. I have like an Asian face, but I was born and raised in the U.S. So even for me, that barrier was like, learning, a lot of learning. I think the other side of it too is like, we are, we have a lot of educational initiatives and, we definitely see that the DE&I is important, not just I mentioned personally to us, but like it's important in crossover with the educational initiatives that we have, like, really empowering the next generation of gamers is like, something that is important to us. Truly sounds cheesy, but it is, so and there's a lot of things that connect within there, right? Like, woman in the gaming space is a big, conversation, especially around this time, it's a big conversation piece. But when we started, it wasn't that big of a conversation piece. It was like something that we wanted to do, um, and now, like, the industry has changed so much in the last 3 years. Like every org is supporting the this cause as well, and it's amazing, right?
It's wild. I actually I got into this space, I suppose, a bit later. So I've been around mostly for the last 2 to 3 years. And even just, I mean, hearing the stories about what it was like before then was pretty horrible. But I don't know that I would have even have gotten into the industry if it was 5 years ago. Right. I don't think this podcast would exist if it was 5 years ago, because I don't
For
think that
sure.
there was people out there willing to listen to what was going on at the time. So I can definitely appreciate that the different initiatives you all are putting forward. And I'm hoping that that leads to kind of a more seismic change eventually. Although we're seeming to get more of a slow trickle of change, but at least
Yeah,
it's something, I suppose.
I think it's like amazing when you see, because I don't know, like when I started, I mean, it wasn't even that long ago, right? And you're saying like 5 years ago, that's like not that long ago, right? But so
No.
much change. It's like very different. Um, when I started, it was right when we were like talking about launching the Team Bumble um, campaign that you mentioned, and it was like, what is this? We're launching something for all women, like the all women Fortnite team. At that time, Fortnite esports was like really popping off, and we signed like a slew of women creators who, like, also at the time were not really signed to orgs yet, or there weren't as many, right? So when we signed like 10 of them, it was like a thing, like it was like, oh, okay, that's what's happening, right? And now it's amazing to see, like, it's incredible to see. It does feel like a slow trickle, but then when you look at it in a chunk, you're like, oh, okay, it is actually really different. And then to see like Riot supporting it through their VCT Game Changers initiatives is like also like, if you have publisher support on that, like that's like a huge deal. I don't know that I would have anticipated that 3 years ago.
Right. Can you tell me a little, some more about some of the stuff that we talked about at the top, like Team Bumble? And I know that you did a lot of stuff for International Women's Day / month. I'm honestly not sure if it's all of March that's considered a month to celebrate women, but that's a different issue. I know that you were doing some things for that with female creators, sending some donations to Aid for Ukraine, which I thought was amazing. But yeah, can you tell me some more about some of the philanthropic initiatives you have going on, motivations behind them, what your, upper management, what you tried to communicate with them, all that good stuff?
Sure. So I'll start with International Women's Month, which, I mean, we just do it all month because why not?
Why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
But it's just a
I have
month.
no issue with it being a whole month. I just
Yeah.
know that March 8th, everyone was posting
Yes.
about
Yes.
International Women's Day, and then
Yes.
I don't know what happens the rest of March.
Yes. it's funny. I just saw on Twitter where all news lives. Um, there are like different women creators like and their tweets on Women's Day, and like one of them was, if today is the only day that you're tweeting about supporting women, then like go think about your life and your choices.
Mhm.
So at Gen.G we do the month because why not? But also it's easier to plan out a whole month, and we can have more, charity initiatives and kind of things that support the collegiate space for the duration of the month. So we this year we're raising actually for broadcasters, um, which is a part of the Thousand Dreams Fund. It's to further the space for women who are interested in the content creation and gaming space, and like providing opportunity for women who are pursuing like a career or have interest in it. We chose the organization this month because it shares a lot of common values with what we're trying to do with the Genji Foundation, which you also mentioned earlier before. But we basically we made a 10-year $1 million commitment during 2020 when so many things were happening in the U.S., including the pandemic and a bunch of racial justice movements and things like that. We first saw that obviously like everyone was posting in support of these different movements. We wanted to like do something actual. you know, yes, it's
Yeah.
good. Yeah, it's good, of course, to make your voice heard and to make it known. But then, like after you broadcast it out into the void, what happens next? And I think like that's what we really leadership here. That's what we were really thinking about. Like, how do we take that and actually help individuals? And it may be like very idealistic, but I just think like, so much within the space has changed. It's moving so fast, and 3 years, 5 years, like you blink an eye and there's like you said, like this podcast couldn't have existed 5 years ago, right? And that's not that much time. So if we're making a 10-year commitment, then like we can only anticipate, what kind of changes could come within this space that's moving so quickly right now, right? So that's why we have that Genji Foundation, and there were just a lot of parallel values shared with the Broadcaster Initiative. So that's why we're supporting them. And then, obviously there's this whole the crisis going on with Ukraine, and we felt it would be not in line with our values if we were just to like post about the we wanted to provide some kind of action. So when everything was happening and people were like, changing their profile pics, and of course, yes, like make your support be known, but what can we do beyond that? So, we're matching what is being raised for broadcasters, and Genji is going to match that to the Do Good Fund for Ukraine. So that's kind of what we're working on this month. So it's kind of like we have a bunch of collab like charity streams between some of our creators. We have one going up today. Actually, it's starting in like 40 minutes between two of our bigger, two of our Valorant creators. And so we have a couple more of those scheduled through the end of the month. And then we also did office hours, which is happening weekly. It's in our Discord. It's just like a space for college students to come in and stop by and kind of like chat with the women staff that we have. There's very many. I did mine last week, and it turned kind of into like a resume review for a couple of students. So I did that. But that's happening weekly. And then we also did a workshop, which is our series to kind of, um, educate, I guess. Like it sounds so marketing like, but basically we did a panel that had like different women in the gaming and music space kind of talk about their careers and their career paths. We actually have a creator. Her name is Nikki Taylor, and she is a professional singer as well. She sang actually one of the world's theme songs. Yeah, so she's like pretty known in the League community. Yeah, she's amazing, and she hosted it. And then we had Shannon Williams, who's one of our Valorant creators. She's actually also the voice actress for Jet within the game itself. So she used to be in the K-pop scene. So
That's
she's also,
so cool.
yeah, so she was a guest on it. We also had Stephanie Poetry, who's like an artist on with 88 Rising. And then we had another artist named Ilona Garcia, and she did the song for Neon, the Neon in Valorant, her that like launched Neon. So we did that. It was really just more about learning about more women in the space, like how they got there,
Right.
what they're doing. Yeah.
So cool. Okay, well, right before we wrap up, and I'm sad that we are wrapping up because I actually wanted to ask you a couple more questions about the metaverse and future tech and where Gen.G is going, but we are just not going to get to that today. So you'll have to come back on sometime. But before we wrap up, I want to do a quick summary and then I'll ask you the last question I have here. We kind of started off with a lot on your background in marketing and what it means. One thing that we did talk about with the metaverse is it's important to be consistent, and that's true in metaverse and in real life, but you have to provide value to the consumer. Consumer-led activations tend to be more successful. That's been kind of a recent shift as social media and access to ads has increased audience participation kind of more so than it used to be. Clear expectations and specific measures of success make it easier for both brands and brand collaborators to get what they need. And choosing creators that align with brand values is important for maintaining authenticity. One thing that you shared, which is super exciting, is that you have a partnership coming with a game developer. That's really cool and unique. At least we couldn't think of another organization that had done that quite yet. And I'm excited for it to come out and for people to view it because you said that the characters are super fun and cute. We also talked about Gen.G and how you gave a very specific measure that 50% of the creativity and innovation and DEI principles come from being a multinational company where you have to learn different business cultures, you have to interact across different value spectrums and just really learn who you're dealing with. So I appreciate the exact number there. And we ended with a lot of the philanthropic initiatives you're involved with at Gen.G, including the ones for International Women's Month through your support for the Broadcast Her initiative. I thought it was really great that you pointed out that everyone should try to act out their values. So not just posting, which can be really great, but also doing things to actually help organizations as much as you can. And I know that you all are doing a lot to support Aid for Ukraine, and you're also doing a lot in the college and education space to directly help folks there. So for our last segment, I do this on every show. I like to ask each guest for a moment of reflection. So just a chance to kind of think back on your career and answer what is one thing you would like to tell your younger self about getting into the gaming industry and being successful.
I guess like fake it till you make it, but put real thought into how you're going to make it. You can't fake it forever. You have to fake it and go in with an open mind to learn and understand community. So
You're saying don't be Anna Delvey, pretend to be a German heiress, claim you have $60 million, and then take out a whole
want
bunch of
to
loans
be
and then get
Anna
caught.
Delvey. Like her voice saying like "Run It Again," it's just echoing in my head for the last 2 weeks. Why are you being so dramatic? Yeah, basically, yeah. Yes, it's good to believe in yourself. Yes, it's good to be confident. Yes, it's good to, um, sell yourself, right? Because you are valuable. Like like you should never undersell your skill set. But yes, don't be Anna Delphi.
Noted.
Yeah.
So fake it, fake that confidence, but don't fake the skill behind it.
Yes. Like you have to learn, you have to be open-minded and willing to understand things that you don't know, and admit that you don't know it, at least to yourself, so that you can, improve them, I guess.
I like that. Don't be Anna Delvey, but be a little bit of Anna Delvey.
A little bit. Yes. Don't be the Tinder swindler at all. But
Yeah, no.
yeah.
Avoid him at all costs.
Like at all. Not even a little bit.
No.
Yeah.
There's no redeemable qualities there.
No,
Just
none.
hard
Yeah.
avoid.
Yes.
Well, Gina, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find and follow you and follow Gen.G and follow all the cool stuff you guys have coming up?
You can follow Gen.G on Twitter at Gen.G Sports or Gen.G. I hope it's just you know what? Let me search that. It's just Gen.G on Twitter, and you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at HiGC Party. So HIGC Party PARTY. That's me.
Yay! And for all our listeners out there, make sure you keep leaving those 5-star ratings and reviews. Be sure to check out other Holodeck Media podcasts, including Meta Business for all the metaverse finance stories you could ever want, and Business of Esports for interviews with industry leaders. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Lindsay Poss, and you can catch me Wednesday nights on the Business of Esports live after show. You can catch this podcast in your feed every Tuesday, sometimes Wednesday. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining us here on Meta Woman. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast everywhere you get your podcasts, leave a 5-star review, and tell your friends, family, and colleagues all about us. Also, make sure to follow Meta TV on all socials to get more of the best metaverse content anywhere. Tune in every week for another episode of Meta Woman.